LCARA Ham Radio presents a Time Machine Tuesday vintage video release.
Welcome to Lake Cumberland Amateur Radio Association. You can find us at LCARA.net, on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Instagram. If you're enjoying the videos we're producing here at LCARA, please help our club out by hitting that subscribe button. Also, give us some feedback on our videos. Click the like button, share with anybody who may find it interesting, and be sure and hit the bell icon to make sure you get notified of the next video release. Hello folks, this is Chris, KY4CKP, and today at Lake Cumberland Amateur Radio Association, we're going to be taking a look at some programming software for your UHF, VHF type radios, handy talkies and mobile units typically, Baofangs and other brands. And so we're going to take a look at Chirp, C-H-I-R-P. There's another similar package from RT Systems. That one costs around $25, so it's not too extravagant. But Chirp is free. And so we're going to take a look at Chirp. I tend to use Chirp, and our Elmer Don and KY4BDP Brian tend to use RT Systems. They're fairly similar. They're doing a fairly similar job, so they're going to be at least somewhat similar. We're going to take a look today, and what we're going to work with, I've got connected up with my programming cable, and you should see a screenshot of the programming cable, the endpoints. And to me, that's where programming with any kind of software begins, whether your radio has some software, your brand or not. And some of them do, and some of those are okay, and some of those leave a little to be desired. I typically prefer Chirp for these kind of radios, or even RT Systems versus what Baofeng may provide, or some of the vendors sometimes provide. But it all starts with a good cable, and so that's why I'm showing a picture of one of the cables I have. This was something that I sort of discovered when I first started looking into this. When I first got some of these radios about 1.5 years ago, is if you're going to have any particular level of frustration, it tends to be because of the cable. Get a good, decent cable with a proper chip inside, and you tend to avoid all that. And I've never really had any trouble with any of the cables I've purchased. Now they're going to be a little bit more expensive. You know, if you spend $3 or $4 or $5 on a quote-unquote programming cable, you may get what you paid for, which is not much. I think the cables that I get, either the handy talkies or the two mobiles that I have, the UV25X4 that we did the video on, and this is a Talk Coupe KT8900D, and there's a lot of variations of that radio. I don't know, $15, less than $20. Not free, not super inexpensive, but they've worked very well, and I've really had no problems doing the programming. So for my my sanity, I think it's well worth the cost. So that's kind of where I think we should start, and again, why I was showing the picture. So I've got that connected up to this Talk Coupe KT8900D style radio. This is a dual band radio, but it has those similarities with some of the Baofangs and some of the other Chinese radios. They tend to have fairly similar styled firmware and things like that. And right now I kind of just blanked it out. I had a full program set on here, but I blanked it out. And so I just want to show a couple things. We'll get into to a little bit about how you can use the software. If we go under Help here in Chirp and go to About, you can see they release a lot of versions of Chirp. Not necessarily every single day, but what they call a daily release. And you can always check the date. You can see I have a fairly recent copy here. It's a month old maybe. And there may be a slightly newer one now. I usually don't have much problem with it, but I'll go and refresh that every so often. And you can see the address hopefully down here, chirp.danplanet.com. And they distribute this. And there's forums, and Mac version, Windows version. I'm using the Windows version here, and they can work with a lot of different radios. So you can go get it at chirp.danplanet.com there. So we have a good cable. We've got the software. The second part is knowing what kind of radio reference in Chirp you're going to need. Now, if we go up here and take a look, so I have a menu option towards the upper left called Radio. And we go to download from radio, Because the first thing you would want to do, even if it's a factory fresh radio, is it's always a good idea to save out the current configuration. And I would say, especially if it is factory fresh, whatever the factory settings are in there, it never hurts to save that out and just have that available in case you need it. The files that this creates are not very big. They're relatively small, basically text files. And so it doesn't hurt to save those out. And so there's a couple things you'll need to do. Now, one of the things you'll need and want to do, and let me see if I can bring it in here and see if it'll get picked up by the recording I'm making here, is you want to take a quick look at Device Manager. So I hope this is getting caught by the recording. I think I'm recording my entire screen, not just this application. So I brought up Device Manager, and you come down here to Ports, COM, and LPT, right, line printers. And you'll see that I have several COM ports that have been created from various applications and things. I've got a couple of programming cables plugged in, I think, and a couple of things. And this particular instance, I'm going to be using COM port 3. So you'll just have to figure out when you plug in your cable what COM port gets created. You can take a look at this screen, then plug in your cable, and you'll see which COM port pops in. So I know that I'm on COM port 3. So we go and we look that up. So COM port 3, then what we'll need to do as you're getting started here is when you click on the vendor, you'll see there's a lot of choices. There's a lot of choices. A lot of the brands should be somewhat familiar to us. Elinco or BTEC or Bofang. You know, BTEC's the U.S. distributor. Anytone, ICOM, Yaesu is in here, Kenwood, Lushon, Lishon, TYT, QYT. Again, lots of brands you probably recognize, quite a few of those. What you're not going to see is Talk Coop. Talk Coop is not a very big brand. It's just one of the many clones from some of the brands that are out there. But this radio, which is sort of a clone of a KT8900D, if I go under QYT, if I go under that brand, and then this third Dropbox line item, the model, you can see they have the 7900, the 8900, and a couple of variations, so the 8900D. So I can use that one for the program. It'll work with this radio. It's certainly similar enough. So you choose your COM port, your brand, and your radio, and they'll either have an exact match. If I look at the Bofang, the BTEC, they've got the UV25X4. Right, that one is popular enough and well known enough that they've got a direct listing for that. So sometimes you'll find a direct listing, especially for the bigger brands. But I happen to know with some research that the Talk Coop KT8900D will work with the KYT KT8900D. There's several radios, several companies that made a version of that. They're all very similar. And so then we could download what's on the radio. Now I just sort of blanked this radio out, kind of wiped out all the settings I had, so it's empty like you see on the screen here. So we'll cancel that for now. But let's say it's a brand new radio, or you're about to go on a trip and you want to load some repeaters on here. In fact, Brian and I do this pretty frequently when we travel for work, is we'll, depending on where we're going, whether we're going to Virginia or Georgia or Illinois or some of the regional areas that we go to and drive to, we'll go look at and find some repeaters and we'll drop them in here. And that way we can just kind of scan through those and find who's active as we're going through those 2 or 3 states to and from that location. But whether you're going to do it for that use, and these programming software applications make that very easy, or again, maybe it's just a brand new radio. So let's go in here and take a look. So now what we want to do is go into radio and come down to import from data source. And there's a few options here, and some of these may require a subscription. But I'm going to come down here to Repeater Book. We mentioned Repeater Book in I think 1 or 2 of our other videos on the repeaterbook.com. You can use it manually, but you can also use it through these programming applications. So Repeater Book, and come under Repeater Book Political Query. Political Query is typically what I do, and it brings up this little box that's going to set your search parameters. So let's just say I want to do it for the state of Kentucky. You can pick your counties. So let's go to Fayette County. Come up here, just scroll up to Fayette County. And let's say I do want to look for 1.25 meter repeaters, right? My radio in my vehicle can do that. This particular one is just regular dual band, 2 meters, 70 centimeters. But we could run this search for 1.25 meters and see if it finds anything. No channels found. Now there's actually 1 or 2 repeaters here, but they may not be on that list. But let's go back into repeater book. Let's just do the more regular stuff. Let's look for 2 meter, regular 2 meter repeaters for Fayette County. And you see we have a few 2 meter repeaters. So we could grab these. You can see they're check marked, and you can add, check, or uncheck the ones you want to grab. But you could grab all those and click OK, and it'll put them and start to build this list here that we can upload to the radio. So we could just click OK, and you see it added them into our list on the radio. And then we could go back to repeater book, political query. Now let's say I want to add in any 70 centimeter repeaters for the Fayette County area. Found a couple of those. So I could just add those to my list. Right? So I've got some 2 meter, some 70 centimeter repeaters. And so you can do that. You can build up your list very quickly and easily. Now, if we want to do a proximity query, put in, say, your zip code 50 miles and which band. Let's go back to 2 meters. Actually, let's try 75 miles and let's try 1.25 meters. Okay, so I found a couple of repeaters within 75 miles of where I am. Or we could go back in there, again, look up, by that proximity, do the query repeater book. You could do proximity, let's do 65 miles, and let's look up just 2 meters. And this time it opened up a new page. Sometimes if there's enough, it'll open up sort of, it's kind of like Excel. There's a new kind of a page that opens up. So you can see it found quite a few 2 meter repeaters within 65 miles of my zip code. And you could pick and choose which ones of these. You can click on these lines and you can highlight these, and you could copy and paste those over here, and you can build up a list very quickly. So whether you're traveling and you want to hit some of the counties you're going to go through when you're traveling, or just kind of hit the states and randomly pull some out of the states and see if you get some. I usually, even when I do it that way, I usually get some repeaters I can use when I'm on that trip. Or just kind of build up your local area and pull in the, if you have a 6 meter radio, a 10 meter radio, those are in there as well. Or even the real small stuff like 23 centimeters and those things. So it's pretty easy to use, and you can drop those in here, and then we can upload this list once you built your list very quickly and easily back into the radio. We'll show that here in just a minute. This other page right here, right now, I'm just going to get rid of it. It'll let me, let me get rid of that one. Since I'm recording on this, the click inputs are a little bit different. Well, we'll just leave it alone. But that's how we can add repeaters into the process here. Now, that's the memory sort of a tab here on the left. Let's go to the next one down. You see it says settings there. Oh, you can see I just clicked on settings. And with some of these programming applications, you can actually get to certain aspects of your radio that you can't always program from the front button interface. And one of the things that I've found for some of my radios is the welcome message. Usually you can't program this welcome message right off the radio itself, but here in Chirp you can. You can welcome, put your call number. In fact, that's my old call sign. I'll just go ahead and update that with my new call sign and my name and then the model number of the radio. And when you now upload this back into the radio, that will be the welcome message when you first turn on the radio. So that's something you can program here. Something else I can think of that you can program, if you've got radios, like especially a lot of the handy talkies, but if you have a radio that can pick up regular FM radio reception, you can set what FM station you want to be the default when you turn on your radio, and then you can change frequencies from there. You typically have to do that from software like this or whatever software came with the radio. Baofeng has software. I think Chirp is overall better and easier to use. So there are some things you can do, and there are some advanced settings, and we're not going to go through all this because there can be quite a bit depending on your radio, and you want to be very careful with some of these advanced settings. Once you've spent some time and maybe researched what the setting would affect, and again, you've got your maybe factory settings you can always fall back on. You've already saved those out. You might play with a few little things, the time of tail squelch, or some of the timers and things. You can set what the default frequencies are that your radio will power up with. So whenever you turn on the radio, it'll show certain frequencies on the channels. You can give names if you want to have a label or a name for something, and not just the frequency. You can give stuff a label or a name. So there's quite a bit in here. Again, I won't really go through all this because a lot of these advanced settings you'd want to be very careful with, and you typically won't touch most of these that often. But if you want to dig into it and dig into documentation, you might come in here and hit some of these. It certainly makes it easy enough if you want to do that. So let's go back to the memories panel here for a second. So we saw that we can import right out of something like Repeater Book very quickly and easily, whole batches of repeaters and things at a time. But you can still do things manually here. If there was a station I wanted to put in manually, you can come into these fields, and when you click on them, they become hot. Or if you need to make an adjustment to something you pulled off of Repeater Book, right? If you needed to change the receive or transmit tone squelch signals, or whether it's a positive or negative offset or something like that, you can see the positive, negative offsets here and what the offsets are. Whether you're going to be transmitting at high power or low power, right? You can set that. And many of these settings you can do right on the radio itself. We showed that with the last series of videos. But using software like this can help you program large numbers of repeaters very quickly and efficiently. And then we could then do an upload. We could then come up to upload to radio with this particular set of repeaters. Again, your COM port and your model number, which should be the same as your download. And as you'll see on the little video inset that I recorded, which is of the face of the radio itself, you can usually see the radio flickering when it's doing the upload, and or you may see the word write. It just depends on the radio and the firmware. But a lot of times you'll see the face, the LED, LCD flicker, and you may even see the word write. Whether you're doing that upload or download, kind of shows you visually, that activity's happening on the radio. So we'll do the upload. It just takes a few seconds. And once it's done, whenever you've downloaded or uploaded from the radio itself will reboot. And, then of course you'll hear if you have a boot up tone, you'll hear that when it reboots. Then you're ready to go. So that's pretty much it with software like Chirp and RT Systems. I think KY4BDP is going to do a quick video on RT Systems. It's fairly simple or similar because you're doing some similar type of work. As far as being able to grab from Repeater Book and do some of the same things we did here. So that's pretty much it for this. The upload's pretty much complete. Radio's rebooting. I'll turn down the volume just so it doesn't scream at us. That's pretty much it, folks. I find it relatively easy to use. It's mainly about getting a good cable. You can struggle for hours if you have a bad cable, and you may never get it to work. Go ahead and spend the money on the cable, if not the software. And again, Chirp is free, and RT Systems is around $25. And there's plenty of information online. Find out what radio you need to do, whether it's already in that list of supported radios. And they're adding new radios all the time. I know here in Chirp, and probably over in RT Systems as well. And once you find the radio to use, find your COM port. And I really haven't had much trouble with this. Watched a couple of videos early on that were pretty informative, and knew that I wanted to get a good cable. And I think that's where a lot of people struggle, is in the cable initially, and making sure they understand what COM port and what radio to choose, whether you can choose a version directly or you need to choose one that's pretty close. So that's pretty much it for Chirp. You can dig into this as deep as you want to go with some of those advanced features. Just be a little bit careful with those in the early days. Make sure you're doing some research on what you might want to change and why. That's pretty much it. So that's it for me, Chris, KY4CKP. Thank you for joining us here, Lake Cumberland Amateur Radio Association, and 73.